This podcast, we're going to be talking with Anya. The reason why I wanted Anya on this lovely call with us on this podcast and talking about how she made it to the next level of her success is because she went from a very high stressful job into the whole, I don't know what to want to do, into starting a podcast, which everyone says, I'm going to start a podcast. I did the same thing and I've been doing it for a year, and she surpassed my thought of what a successful podcast is 100-fold. I'll let her explain that. And she did it with ease and grace, right? And she has a way of doing it, and she had to level up who she was and her thinking in order for her to do it with ease and grace. And that's what I want to take apart today. And I found it to be fascinating that someone can do anything in the extremes, right? Like how I get people to feel better, and people call it magic. Now I want to know the magic behind how you made your podcast successful. So first things first, Anya, please introduce yourself and explain to people why you are next level.
Patrick, you're so kind. Thank you for having me. Everyone, hello. I'm so excited to be here and share my story. I don't know if the grace is there. I don't know if that poise is quite there, but I'm happy to share everything I've learned along the way. Prior to this venture, which literally happened just 4 months ago, I was working at Meta. So in the corporate world for almost 7 years, just at Meta, I was in PhD recruiting. I had the sense that I could be doing more. Like I knew that recruiting wasn't going to be my end all be all. So I decided, while having kids, while working full time, I'm going to go get my MBA. After my MBA, I was like, why don't I just get another Master of Science on top of that? And then as I'm doing all of that, I also had to face the reality that the layoffs were looming in the Meta world. And instead of 2 point, I don't think the break was really in there, but I decided to look at it as an opportunity to say, if I did get this fresh start and I could do anything, what would that be? What purpose would I be serving? Because in my corporate world, yes, on paper, everything looked great, the money, the everything, but I never felt super fulfilled. There was always this element of stress, but what was it for? At some point, I was like, well, someday I'll retire, a couple of decades from now, and then I'll get to live that life. And so when the layoffs were here, I decided to think about, well, if I was to pursue something, what could it be? And I reflected on my own journey where the school or academic path wasn't, to me, really making me realize that, going to school was the key point in success. But it is the reflection that when we start learning and focus on this learning journey and embracing that in ourselves, we can have this undoubting confidence, unfailing confidence in what we can accomplish. So it made me realize that I can venture into new areas. I can overcome these points that feel really hard and uncomfortable, stick in there, lean in, and get to the next side of it. And then I also thought about this point where throughout my life, I've been that person who does focus in on maybe be audacious, trying to learn, try to explore new things, maybe make some people uncomfortable in the process. And I never shared it with people a lot because I didn't want them to feel, too bad about what they are not doing. And then slowly but surely, I did share with just a couple of people what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And I found that instead of them feeling bad, they actually found inspiration from that to take action in their life and do more in their life. So all that to say, I created the podcast Right Off Track with the sense of inspiring people to feel like they could do more in their life and sharing real stories of others who are on that journey, who are just human, who don't have everything figured out, but they're just taking those actions and learning and failing, but getting back up in the pursuit of their own journey, because that's something that's very meaningful. So I can't say it's been stressless, but having gone through the journey where stress was a constant without a purpose in sight, I am doing things differently because that vision of what I want to live like every day is much clearer to me than what I had in the past.
So what I was just writing down was twofold now, because I have many, many questions if you're going to have it noticed. When you said you had a whole lot of stress, and I know this is not stressless, but how could you compare the level of stress? Like, what was stress doing to your mind and to your body? How would a person know that they're in a high stress job, not by saying I have a high stress job because of my to-do list is always happy? Like, what was happening inside your mind? What was happening inside your body?
Well, for me, it was always a sense like I'm not enough in what I'm doing. Like I'm not measuring up. Like I need to change who I am to be successful. Like I need to become more professional. I need to tone down my energy. I need to be more like my manager. If only I could do that. And it does something to you to where inside you have the sense of like, I'm just not good enough. And it messes with your head. I don't know, physically, you just feel always on edge when you have Friday evenings and you can't turn off. You're still checking that email. You're still thinking about it. Even when you're off, your mind's still there. But the worst part about it is it feels empty because you're not doing it something that like, oh, there's a purpose, there's a fulfillment. It's just doing because you're hoping one day it gets better. And then in terms of stress that I had, like I would have like nausea, heartburn, like
Oof.
not necessarily headaches, but it would be like for me, it's the digestion that got hit with the nerves and stress of it all, where like you can feel like your body is just like it's overwhelmed. And especially with the layoff culture happening for months, even before I was laid off, like it was such a physical manifestation, like what the heck? I thought I was pregnant like for the third time. It's like but I wasn't, but it was that bad that I thought it was really something beyond just like the nerves affecting my body.
So we jumped over one massive thing, and I'm very surprised that I'm very curious about you. Is one, how successful is this 3-month podcast, 3-month-old podcast?
So right now, I think we just crossed like 600 5-star reviews. We have like, I think 20,000 5-star clicks, which on average, like we're probably up towards like the top 20% of podcasts, 25. I could be like off in my numbers, but that's what I read. But to be honest, like I didn't know where this was going to go. On day one, I think I mentioned to you, nobody saw the podcast, and that was my worst case scenario, that nobody's going to care. Like I have this passion. I think this is going to be helpful to others, but what if nobody cares? And on day one, nobody viewed it. And I put in all this efforts. I think I had 10 episodes recorded prior to that, right? I edited myself. I didn't have a team at all and nobody watched. And I was definitely upset. But then when you do something and it doesn't turn out, and that's your worst case scenario, you realize, well, I'm still alive. And you have this reflection point. Is this meaningful enough where I'm going to continue? Where I'm going to continue and get better and learn because the vision, the purpose is that important to me. And that reflection point was important because it was a confirmation that I'm going to keep doing this because it's internally that meaningful to me. And I figured out ways to make it better. I looked for like resources to help me with the analytics on the background, to help me like do advertisements to get more exposure to it. And then along the way, I just asked for a lot of help and support. I kept learning how to be better. I watched myself, which I know I talk fast. And I also was self-conscious about my voice going into this. Yes, I was also self-conscious about my voice, and now I'm a podcaster. So I consistently have to hear myself, see myself, and those things aren't things I love doing. But you do it over time and it gets easier, right? So the hard things get easier when you do them consistently, and you have to then focus on like, what's the next thing? So we finished the podcast launch. It was 8 weeks. So I was posting, I think 6 episodes the first week, 4 episodes after the first week. So a ton of episodes were going out, and now we moved to 2 episodes a week. So the launch is over. And yes, the results are good, but I haven't necessarily monetized it, to be transparent between all of us. So my next step is like, okay, if this is going to be real, what does that look like? Right? Like this is something that it's not a passion project for me. It's a purposeful work that I want to create into a real thing that's affecting the world and helping inspire the world. And so that's my focus now, is like, what do I do to get to the next level beyond where I've achieved so far?
So you're moving at a geometric rate, right? We're not even speed of speech here, right? It's more like what people, you're overdoing what you even thought was possible. And what I heard from you were saying that most people don't do well enough at all is they don't have access to a vision, what they want. So real quick, what is your vision for this? Like, why are you doing this? What is your why?
Yeah, I'd love to dig into that and just comment on what you just said in a moment. My why is I know what it's like to feel alone in pursuit of something that's meaningful to you. I know what it's like to feel like you're a crazy person amongst everybody else and nobody gets you. Like you want to have more in life. You want to be doing something that's meaningful, but you have no clue where to start, and you don't have that network around you that's inspiring you closely or even know how to get there. And so my vision for the podcast is to create this community, this inspiration, this resource for people who want to get out of the rat race, get out of that aren't serving them, to have another side to the story where people like them started this journey. They were imperfect. They failed. They learned. They kept going, because I know that's the motivation that keeps me going on my journey. When I stumble, I reflect on an XYZ person who had the similar experience. I think when we find somebody who's relatable to us, it gives us a sense that we could also be doing more. So that's my inspiration for the podcast, is this belief that we could, that you, I, everybody listening is capable of more than what they imagine today. And hopefully they can find their unique journey and inspiration for it on this podcast and through our work together. But also, can I say just one thing? You mentioned most people don't get here. Most people don't even start. To begin, most people talk about, and I hear it all the time, I really want to start a podcast, and they don't start. Like, don't be a perfectionist. I am not. And you can tell that there's downsides to that. But just do it. Just do it and learn. Don't just talk about it.
So one of the things that I see a lot in getting a person to transform physically as well as mentally is exactly what you said, is like they think I should do something, but they never start. And it's based off of one of the things that you actually, there's the two things that you said was I had to get over my flaws, one, and there was a lot of fear there that you had to work it through. So let me, and the third one is I'm a big thinker. So let's take this apart real quick. One, what is it like to be a big thinker? How could you get a person that's not thinking big to start stretching and making themselves feel and think much better? And I lead with that word feel, because the more and more you can get passionate about something, the more of a hit you can take that's going to push you back. Because the more you feel, the more passion gives you that driver to push through things. So how does a person that's not a big thinker start to think big based off of your experience?
What helped me is this reflection. A lot of times we question ourselves, like, who am I? Why? How could I? Like, am I worthy of doing XYZ? And I have that plenty too. But now thinking about, why not me? We see so many people and we idealize them and we put them on a pedestal and everything they accomplish as if they are not human. As if we look at our idols and say, like, oh, they were just born a certain way, or they just had these opportunities handed to them. And maybe for some that is true. But the more I interview people, the more I'm around this, the more I read, the more stories consistently talk about people who make amazing stuff happen are not just naturally gifted. They just work hard at it. And there's an equalizing factor there where if you just keep working on it and you don't give up, amazing things happen. And that's what I truly believe in when the whole learning thing came into my life. Again, when I had this point when I was in my late 20s and I decided to change my careers into tech. And for me, like, I thought it was too late for me. I thought, if I didn't get my bachelor's in something way back then, I can't pivot to something new. And I did. And I know for me, that was like a light bulb moment, that you can do something very different that maybe you didn't anticipate possible through perseverance, through learning. And that mindset has carried over to me in this journey where, yes, it's scary. And yes, even I look like, my goal, to be transparent, is to have 1 million followers. And that may seem pompous, and I get that. But how I justify it to myself, like, the bigger platform I have, the more influence I can have and support others, right? I can have a nonprofit that I'm supporting with donations and income that's coming here. I can maybe inspire people to see, hey, this average person, Anya, if she can do it, why can't I do it? Right? Like, all these things that I think about. So
I can easily say, Anya, you're not average, mama.
But everybody has something special. You know what I mean? Like, we're all humans. Everybody you see is just a human being working hard at something. And that if you're a listener and you're like, I'm not sure, can I? Yes, you can. Literally, everybody has something that they can do, that they can add value to the world. And that's my message. Like, I just look more at people as humans and dissect what they do. And I think what's stopping people is just that internal self-doubt. It's not lack of ability. It's just that people don't want to go through this hard journey because it sucks a lot of times. But ultimately, it just takes a human to start working their path and not stopping. Like, even if they fail and things get really challenging, they pivot, they learn, and they keep going. And I think that's the ultimate differentiating mindset for success. You just keep wanting to grow, you stay curious, and you don't stop. So I don't know. That's my mindset for ultimate success. And like, what keeps me motivated on the big goals is that we are all worthy of it. And why not us? Why can't we do something great? It
That
all
is a
takes is
powerful
action.
question. That
Yeah.
is a powerful reframe that a lot of people don't use is I can't. Why can't you? Like, why
Yeah.
not? Right.
Yeah. Why aren't you worthy? Why aren't you good enough to make this journey? Everybody
And that's
starts
one of the
somewhere.
things that's one of the things that I get all my clients and my students to start doing is start looking at the childhood state and start reframing their childhood traumas and things like that, which then brings me to the second part
Yeah.
is a person will be like, yes, I know you're saying I can, but I don't like the way I sound.
Yeah.
How'd you get
Oh,
over that?
so funny story. I don't know if I mentioned this to you when I was little. So I'm Russian. I came here when I was little with my mom. So I was a foreign kid growing up. I was never cool. My mom never signed me up to any sports. She told me later that she thought that I would find myself as a child of 7. So I found myself eating McDonald's in front of TV watching wrestling. That's how I found myself. So I was a chubby
Oh,
foreign kid growing up. And at one point I decided, I want to, write poems, try to sing and listen to and have my mom listen. And my mom is I love her, but she's like a very like Russian mom. Like she doesn't mince words of how she feels. So she told me at that right formative age that Anya, your voice is the kind that goes better with music. And to my ears, what I heard is like, Anya, your voice is like, cover it up, girl. Right. And so now I'm doing a podcast, right? Like that's the element is that there's so many excuses that we can make about what's not good about us to do something, but really those are excuses. Like you can do all those things despite your voice, despite your appearance. You look at people around the world, millions of people, and not everybody looks a certain way, not everybody sounds a certain way. People resonate with how you make them feel, right? We hear it over and over again, but that's the truth of it. So I focus on how I make people feel and not being self-conscious about my voice. And the funny thing is that the more I listen to it, I'm more okay with it. I'm not saying I'm going on American's Next Top, I don't know, model or idol or whatever, not for looks or sounds or whatnot, but I'm focusing on what I can bring to the table and using what I have to make it happen and trying to improve as well on what I have.
so I'm gonna switch hats because I like to play around and have fun. And one of the things that I heard is, during your formative years, which I do everything a lot of my roots, I get people to focus on the root structure of why they're in pain and why they're not moving up. And it's based off of childhood development. And between the ages of 0 and 7, that's where you imprint everything. So you had a belief for a very long time that you wasn't good enough because you actually spoke about those exact words. And you gave me now an example of I'm not good enough and how your mom would speak to you just about something I'm trying to do. And she gave you a suggestion that you took in a negative way because you did also already felt you're not good enough. Right. So in my head, I was like, all right, so she had to overcome that belief structure. And did you do any active work around I'm not good enough or I can speak better? Or did you just hyper focus on the bigger why of I'm going to make people feel better? And that trumped the I'm not good enough and I don't have a good voice. How did that work out?
Yeah. I don't think it's an easy answer because the positive side of my mom is she would always read self-help books. So all the methods there are for energy healing and development and tapping mechanisms, like I've tried them all probably growing up on self-improvement. So somewhere along the way, I just developed more confidence in who I am. And part of it probably is also being a mom. Part of it, like who you are, like you stop caring so much about pleasing other people when you become a parent. Your priorities change a little bit
that
about
is true.
like, this is who I am, friends. My priorities are a little bit different and how I show up to the world is a little bit different. But yes, I think I just had to question what was no longer serving me. A lot of those things.
So you did do the introspection.
Yes.
You did look and say, is this helping me?
For sure. For sure. I read a while ago a book of subtle art of not giving an F. And in it talks about for better or worse, you are in control of things that happen to you. What I mean by that is like you can control how you react to things. So what you don't like, whether it's, how people are reacting, you control a lot of those things. And so I had to like, what's no longer serving me about my beliefs that make me show up a certain way in the world. And I'm not saying that happened instantly. I think, again, there was a lot of maturity happening to it, but that reflection definitely led me to a better place now with this journey.
So you did do belief work. I was just writing. You did do your own internal belief, and I
Yeah.
believe that's a massive part in getting a person to the next level is looking at where you are and how
Yeah.
you got there and what you got there. And I
Yeah.
want to really put a big hard pause on something is saying, when you look back at your childhood, your parents were not wrong. Your parents
Yeah.
were not bad people. They worked as best as they can to do whatever
Yeah.
they need to do. It's just everybody could be. When I learned this, my mentor, um, deceased mentor, Barry Green, he was telling me, he was just like, listen to me, I've been doing this for 67 years.
Right.
And one of the things that I asked every parent that walked in my mind is in my room is, did you study childhood development? And they said no. And
Right.
what they did do is they said three things to him. They said, I don't want to mess up my kids like my parents messed me up. I want to
Right.
give them a better life than
Yeah.
what happened. And I'm forgetting the third at the precise moment, but it was
Yeah.
something ridiculous. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's the only thing people really thought about, but they never studied childhood development in a way, how to speak with, how to nurture a child, how to bring that child out of its shell, as well
Yeah.
as they are learning from not what you say, but what you do. So
Oh,
that's why I want to
absolutely.
bring that very, very clear is like when you start looking back to make these level up and
Yeah.
seeing your beliefs, you have to remember what you're seeing and what you experience does not mean your parents are mean or faulty or
Yeah.
bad. They're just working the best what they had with no training. You are
Oh,
actually doing the work that they need to be doing.
could I add to that? I think that's people in general. We look at people in the world and we can feel like, oh, they're such a bad human, or like, oh, they, offended me, even not our parents. But I try to look at like people are doing the best of what they have. So if somebody is not showing up the best that they can towards you, they're probably dealing with their own issues. Right. So instead
100%.
of carrying those energy towards them, like let them have peace. Like they are struggling with that on their own. And to add to that, one of the things I had to work with is that I had this belief that I don't fit in and that therefore people don't like me. Again, I was an international kid. I changed countries and schools so frequently. I think I had six or seven before I finished high school. And I had to find a reframing for this instead of like, oh, I don't fit in, people don't like me, to I'm very likable.
So you use the
Not
process
to
of
be pompous.
reframing.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? I like, what if like this is again serve me anymore? Is this actually valid? Sometimes we're like, why do I even have this? And then like really dig into that to things that aren't serving anymore. Is this valid? Where does it come from? And what do I want to be serving me around this area? So instead of saying like I don't fit in and people don't like me, like I'm actually really likable. So that's something that I've also had to deal with. It's not my parents; they like me, but it's also the things around you, the people around you, and the beliefs you form around those situations.
So let's cap this up real quick on one side
Cool.
because my whole process deals with three massive pillars, right? And
Okay.
I'm going to capsize this one small part so everyone can catch up and that's listening
Cool.
is um Anya, you have this great podcast that's doing massive things and you had to level yourself up. The way that you leveled yourself up personally so you can now do the things on the business side, and this is where people get tripped up all the time, is they try to do things massive on the business but they never level up themselves.
Mm-hmm.
One, you got connected with why you're doing what you're doing after a massive, humongous stressor that was hard on you, hard on your body to the point where you thought you were pregnant and you wasn't pregnant. Does that make sense?
That
Like
makes sense.
you
That's true.
started tapping into your why. Then you
Yeah.
started to look internally and look at the beliefs and the things that you were saying as you were moving through the process.
Yeah.
As you were going through the process, things were coming up, and then you were just reframing them.
Yeah.
Does that sound like I'm making it sound really, really simple? And there's a law. It's simple, not easy. Everything I'm saying is very, very simple. It's just not easy to do in the moment.
Yeah.
And I want to just capsize that and say, look at those three things. Can you start reaching for the things that you really want? Think that big vision and then start saying, why am I not taking the first step? And as you take that first couple of steps, what is the crazy, batshit crazy things that you're saying to yourself that's not positive?
Yeah.
Reframe those, and that's all you're going. Do you want to add anything to that little chunk section before we move on to how to make a podcast dope?
Yeah. Just two last things. I didn't know where this was going to go or how I was even going to start. I just started taking action. And I find that self-doubt gets quieter when you start taking action and doing stuff and figuring out. Like self-doubt is very loud when you're giving all the hypotheticals space to flourish. But when you start doing, even if it's small steps in a direction that you're just like, oh, I think this is going to help me, your self-doubt can't be as loud because you're forming, you're actually creating the future. So that hypothetical self-doubt or everything that's going to go wrong is diminishing because you're recreating the future or creating the future you want to have. So if you're not sure about your cause, something, start acting in the general direction. Things will come together and the self-doubt will change. Like confidence will grow in place of that self-doubt as you form the path towards that.
Awesome. Okay. Now let's get into the juicy part. This is for all of you podcasters out here. The question is, if you want to give someone the nuts and bolts of how to start a podcast, let's go with start nuts and bolts of the podcast.
Yeah.
And then how to level up the podcast. So first you were just like, let me just start a podcast. Let me just grab a mic and start talking. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nuts and bolts of how to start a podcast. And then the things that really, pushed it over the edge when you started looking at analytics, when you started, because we talked about networking and then you went to ads. So I want to talk about that after you're like, this is what you have to do to get a good podcast going. What are those few things?
So I think, to be very transparent, when you start out, you're not sure how much money you're going to invest into this. And there's a lot of investments that are going to happen depending what your end goal is. So sometimes it's good to be a little bit oblivious about what that's going to cost you when you start. Because when you start putting in all the things like, oh, I don't know if I would have started. So again, not to scare people off. But what you do need to do is you need to have a good microphone. Yes, that's what I have. That's what I had. And I upgraded a little bit earlier. But key thing, whatever mic you get something that maybe has good recommendations. Read the manual. I didn't. Honestly, I had it probably backwards for the first couple episodes, and you can tell the difference. Too. So it's tricky, though, to be fair. Like the front and the back look very similar. So give myself a little credit. The second thing, I try to do everything on my own. Like for the first week of 6 episodes I launched, I edited. I had to figure out how to edit. And I didn't give myself like much time. I think I had a month to where I recorded 10 episodes, figured out how to launch them, figure out the platforms. Like I was just doing it. And probably there's the balance between Anya and what's sane, right? There's probably a middle barrier where you don't have to go as crazy. You can slow down a little bit to find like, what is the plan? Like, what is going to be my audience? What is going to be my content? Who am I going to invite to it or going to record those episodes? So you give yourself enough buffer time, or maybe you can focus on that first step and foundation to then you plan your launch. I was doing it all as we go at the same time. So in reflection, there were a lot of learnings. Right. I learned, for example, like when I started, people were saying you should go on Spotify for podcasters. It's a popular RSS platform. RSS is just a way to stream your podcast to different providers. And I learned that there's a price for free, right? So if you do things for free, there's going to be a price for it. If you have, again, depending what your goals are, you can start it. That's fine. You can always move RSS feeds. But if you start with Spotify for podcasters, you don't own that RSS feed. So the quality thing, the thing that matters with the podcast is the numbers. People who work with you, people who will monetize you or give you those opportunities will want to know, like, what are your numbers in different platforms? Like, what is your audience there? And the thing when you don't have a paid RSS feed is that for Spotify, will only see the numbers aligned to Spotify. You're not going to see any other numbers that are from any other host. So you're going to see the very high level, like what are the top level downloads from other areas, but you don't get to see any other breakdowns besides that. So consider that there is a cost for free. You can start out that way. That's very valid. That's what I did. And it's not the end of the world to move. But if you are thinking about starting strongly from the beginning, think about, like, is it okay to budget a little bit more for the extra costs to save yourself pain?
Like I use Podbean.
That's what I use as well. Podbean is great. It's like one of the most affordable kind of options to start with. So I definitely would recommend that. And I am biased, so that's true. But Podbean is affordable. It also, again, it's cheaper than some of the other options. It does all the functionality. The other thing I would invest in is get a graphic designer, create your cover. Like I tried to do it myself. It's fine. But I had a friend whose graphics are like, Anya, can I help you? And I was like, okay, fine. And it looks so much better because your podcast cover, you're not going to change that probably, right? That's the one thing. So if you're going to start a podcast and want to put it out in the world, invest in that. Also, unless you want to spend a mind-numbing amount of time in editing, and it's still not going to be perfect unless you're a perfect editor, hire an editor. There are great services like Fiverr, where editors, graphic designers are working that you can outsource for those tasks. So those are the things you want to do. Like for your own sanity, hire a graphic designer for your cover or logo, whatever you want. So it looks professional, because that's the first impression. People won't know how amazing you are. They're not going to listen. They're going to make a snap decision based on partially what you put in terms of your title, your kind of SEO, search engine optimization kind of references, and the cover that they see. And then they're going to start listening to you. Again, they can't see what amazing energy you have. They're going to see they're going to hear how it sounds, most likely, right? Unless you're doing video, which is fine too. So the mic is going to be important. Googling the instructions for a mic, unlike me, is going to be important. Editing is going to be important, right? You can do things like Riverside, which is where I shoot, is on a platform called Riverside. It's very helpful if you have interviews coming in. So it makes it very easy to have guests come in, all that. And they do have an editing platform. Like you can look at the words that people, are reading, and you can edit it that way, but it's not perfect. So again, if you are starting out, I would invest in a graphic designer, an editor, even just for a few episodes, just to see how to start, like alleviate the stress for yourself, and then an RSS provider and a mic. So those would be the things. Like you don't have to get all this crazy software for your mic. It just could be simple to start, basic setup, and you can build from that. Like get maybe a light fixture. Those would be the essentials. And you know what else? Like start finding other podcasts that you like. Like start listening more. I found, I don't know if it's the same for you, when you start creating content, you look at content in a different light. Now you're not just observing for your own entertainment. You're like, oh gosh, his intro is so good.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
you start taking it apart.
Those
yes,
questions he asked. Ooh, I'm going to ask that question. So start getting really curious about what you like and you don't like, and learn from that. And this is your opportunity to create. And the last thing I'll add, don't be a perfectionist. Like something done is better than grand things planned. And there's a more eloquent ways to put that, but like start doing and perfecting and noting down what you want to get better, but don't just stop and like push for a year until you launch and make it perfect, because it's never going to happen that way.
So what is now? Person starts, they start going. In your case, it was like 18 days and then you started blowing up.
Yeah.
What do you do to really start pushing the metal to the metal and start going? How did you start leveling up the number of views? The biggest thing that I love about what you're doing is how are you getting also the comments and the reviews? Like how did you switch that over?
So one thing was definitely getting more eyeballs on it, right? So I found somebody on Fiverr that does podcast promotion, and I hired him to help me get more exposure one way. The other thing is obviously I have a guest themed podcast. Right. So a lot of what I do is like I find guests on my own. There are services for matching people with their podcasts, like Podmatch and whatnot. I never have explored those too heavily. But what I try to do is I try to find the people that inspire me in my life. Because again, my podcast has a certain theme about people finding a unique journey. And so when I was starting, I just wanted to get them on my podcast. And then I asked them, like, who would you refer, who inspires you on your podcast? So it's a journey. It's not a perfect set. Maybe you have a better networking strategy, but it's helped me find more and more inspiring people and like get some incredible guests just because I reached out to them or somebody knew them, and build my confidence around around this whole mission. Like people were finding it interesting. People were saying, yes, they want to join. And so gradually this approach helped me. I also decided, what's going to work is if I add a lot of value to my guests for being on my podcast, for working with them. So what I do, which is a lot of work, and decide what works for you, I create a lot of social comments for them. Like, so I have a carousel that goes out the week after for all of my guests around like their contribution to the podcast. We do social reels. We do an Instagram story the week before. So everybody who comes on my podcast gets a really amazing experience, right? You want people, the guests especially, to remember how they felt and invite people who again inspire them. So part of it is like, to me, is the experience that you create, not just for your audience, but the people who are taking the time to be part of your podcast and creating the experience for your audience. So that's something that's been important and beneficial to me, is that people come here, they have a great experience with the podcast, they recommend other amazing people there, and they feel confident about recommending because they just see how much value it brings to them as being part of this experience.
Okay. So you listen to the podcast, or you have your editor pull out some clips and make a carousel. A week before they launch, you put that out to start building that experience. 1, 2, let's go back to 1 is you invite people that you are inspired by.
Mhm.
Two, you
Yeah.
have them on your podcast, get the carousel clips, put them on
Yeah.
there so they have a great experience. And the experience being
Yeah.
that I feel loved because this person's showing me off and things like
Yeah.
that. And it was a great interview.
Yep.
And then followed by you would ask them, who do inspires you? That would be great on this podcast, which then
Yeah.
it goes downhill from there. That's how you get the networking in. How did you get the reviews now?
Yeah, I just asking people, right? Just asking people for support. Again, I ask people's feedback to share like what they like, comment on them. I'm always saying like I'm learning, right? So if people feel like you're generally learning from the process, they're probably more likely to give you feedback. So in honestly, this scenario, I'm still growing in, right? In terms of like getting more reviews and feedback. A lot of the reviews I get aren't even in public forums. They're more coming into like my inbox, right? Or there's a comment here and there, or maybe people like reaching out to me on LinkedIn. They're finding me on the platforms and more like direct messaging me, which is fine, right? And then I take that comment and I put it into a social post. Lots of repurposing going on here, right? So,
never thought about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, what's interesting with podcasts, like what I read is like podcasts that have like bigger exposure sometimes get less comments, and vice versa. Sometimes podcasts that have like a little bit less ratings have more comments. I don't know why, but there's sometimes that kind of feel maybe people feel like it's less personal when they see a podcast with like more ratings. Let's say they may feel like, oh, it's so big that nobody's going to care about my comment. So honestly, I get more of the comments off the podcast platforms and more into my social platforms, so people feel maybe they can reach me more directly, which is fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm realizing that we are running quite long. I want to do this but that's just me. So
That's okay.
my last thought is this. We are working with a person that is doing a lot. We talked about how you're dealing with your body, how the stress dealt with your body.
Yeah.
How are you doing with structure and timing this out? Because you did say it's not stress free. How are you doing with all the extra stress that's coming with having a high performing podcast and not doing all the things? Like, how are you structuring this out where it's not affecting you like the meta job?
Couple of things there. I'm not perfect. It's still something I'm very much looking to get better at. What I find that even on the most difficult weeks I have, and like this Friday, I'm gonna be waking up at 3 a.m. to do a podcast with a Nigerian radio station with an entrepreneur there. Like it gets crazy sometimes. But even on the busiest day when I am super tired, I've never felt more alive and fulfilled. There's a different energy that happens when you're putting in the work towards yourself and a vision and purpose than just putting in the work, just the grind that doesn't serve anything, unfortunately. I know it's money, but still there's a different energetic feel to it. But that said, what I learned, even just last week, I'm learning all the time. I learned last week that I was going against one of my values, creating content. What I mean by that is not something super risque, but more that I was trying to create content every day in the morning because I think everybody else like should be posting around the morning, like every day. And mornings for me are crazy time. Like I was trying to do that and I was doing it, but I felt so depleted trying to create content in this manner. And I realized like my value is around doing things that are around my energy. Like when I'm feeling energized out, that's when I want to create content that's genuine, that's pure, that's aligned of who I am. And I realized like, it's not that I'm going to stop creating content, but I can realize what my values are. And for example, I sat now on Sunday, I kicked off my boys out of the house and I created content for 2 hours. You know what I mean? So rethinking about what is your flow? What do you want to live like every day while you're doing this, and honoring that and being cognizant of times when you're going against those values and thinking, well, how can I restructure this? So now, for example, I'm thinking about, yes, I'm going to create content on the weekends, but I'm also probably going to post things the day before. Like in the evenings, I feel a lot more calmer to create certain kind of content that I can post the next day and I can comment on later, right? There's this flow of how do you comment on things that you create, but all that blah, blah, blah. So my focus is like, I'm learning a lot in the process and I'm learning what's working, what isn't, and then improving on that all the time. And that keeps me sane. And also creating structure. Like, and I get up in the morning, 5:30. I try to meditate, which I suck at. I work out first thing in the day because like it's not because it's cliche, not because I'm ripped, but it's so sane to do so. It's so important for your body to start moving before you get into this crazy mental spiral for the day with everything you have to do. So I just very consciously create these blocks and foundations for myself that make me perform better.
All right. So let me see if I can sum this up for everybody. So the way that you're staying able to manage your stress load is one, you're time blocking in essence.
Yeah,
You have blocks of different times you're doing one, you're first thing in the morning.
yeah,
You actually, the beautiful thing is you found the timing that works energetically for you to create
yeah.
content. You're
Huge.
batching your content. For you, it's on the weekend, but it's batching. It's
Yeah,
not something that you make. Today, we're going to do this content. You make it and do it all and push it all out today. So you're batching it
yeah,
out. And then the
yeah,
other sweet spot that I heard was there is a strategy behind when to comment back for LinkedIn and
yeah,
all the other platforms that you just spoke in LinkedIn. That's why I started
yeah,
there. But like you actually comment the next day or the night of rather than have to be on top of it, right?
yeah,
Which is
yeah,
highly pressured.
yeah. I just realized like I need to find what works for me and not just try to emulate what everybody else is doing because that's all fine and dandy, but we all have our unique lives. Like you're a parent, I'm a parent. What I can't just keep doing something that feels wrong for me, right? Like I don't want to live a life where something happens when I feel like it's just not serving me consistently for this goal. Like a goal is not worth it if all along the way in that journey you're miserable. There's no goal. Like, our life is precious. You know that. I know that. We shouldn't be focused on this end success goal. It should be a success journey where we are consciously agreeing and happy to do what it takes every day. And we're living the life that honors kind of our values every day along the way to that goal, like the journey.
Well, that's beautiful. All right, so many questions are still popping up in my head, but I'm not going to keep on going. I love to end every single one of my podcasts with what would you like another person, like if you had a magic wand, like you've been around the block, you understand what's happening. What is something that other people don't know that they need to know?
Yeah. If you're listening to this, I just want you to know, like, everybody who accomplishes something amazing is just human, just like you. And they started somewhere just like you are maybe starting or about to start. And I truly believe you and all of us, we are capable of absolutely incredible things. Like, don't let that limiting mindset, like the mind shit, stop you. Don't let perfection stop you. Just taking action. I know it sounds very simple, but to your point, you said like simple and easy are different things. The simple truth is by focusing on little things, on little growth things, and just pivoting when you need to, amazing things will happen. So, like, stop, cut the bullshit, if that's okay to say, and start acting and like set your goals high because they say like if you aim for the moon, even if you don't reach it, you'll end up in the stars. There's no downside to shooting big. Like
I
you will
say something
always get
very
better
similar
from
to that.
that.
I say something very similar to that. All right. So if anybody wants to hear your podcast, get to know you a little bit more, please tell them how to reach you, get in touch with you.
Okay. Very simple. Well, I would be thrilled. Please reach out to me. I'm just a human being as well on this journey, trying to inspire myself and others on this, purposeful mission in life. And I'm on Right Off Track, all one word, Right Off Track. We are on all the podcast platforms, on all the socials. So on LinkedIn, I'm Anya Smith, and you can tag me there, but on everything like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, what is it, Threads, everything else is Right Off Track. So find me there, and I'd be delighted to get to know you and support you on your journey.
Perfect. Everyone, I will see you. I thank you so much for being a good listener, staying here to the very, very end. And as she said, if you like the content, please leave a question. I am learning every day. Please leave a review and comment, and I'll see you on the next one.
Oh, thanks, Patrick. This is awesome.